So let's jump into our first segment. We're calling our first segment The Good, the Bad, and the Strange. And basically what that is each of us, Dan and I, are going to share 3 headlines. One is going to be something good, another one's going to be something bad, and the third one is kind of more of a wild card, something strange. So I'm going to kick it off here. Number 1, the good. And let me just turn on screen share here before I do this, because otherwise it might not make too much sense. So my good headline is dogs can detect breast cancer from a bandage, according to researchers. And this article basically says that somehow, I don't know how, but dogs can actually smell the cancer in there, or they can sense the cancer that are on the bandages from cancer victims, and they are able to detect that cancer. So really interesting there, because, and it actually says they perfectly detect it. So it was actually 100% accurate. If you can look right here, it says after 6 months of training, the dogs, German Shepherds, became 100% accurate, and they were able to detect it. I'm not sure what good that would do. Possibly you would be able to figure out if somebody has cancer that doesn't know that they have cancer, if people wanted to get tested via German Shepherd, which would be a very non-invasive procedure, I would have to think. So that could be something that's very good and beneficial there. Next, the bad. Apple says it fixed the CIA vulnerabilities that were mentioned in the Vault 7 WikiLeaks dump years ago. So basically, Apple responded to WikiLeaks' assertions that among other corporations, Apple, Google, and others, were compromised. Their devices were compromised by hacking software generated by the CIA and its contractors. Apple's response was, we have preliminarily assessed the WikiLeaks disclosures from this morning. Based on our initial analysis, the alleged iPhone vulnerability affected iPhone 3G only and was fixed in 2009 when the 3GS was released. Additionally, our preliminary assessment shows the alleged Mac vulnerabilities were fixed in all Macs launched after 2013. This is a subject I would love to tackle even a little bit more, given the fact that we're in the short segment here, I just want to touch on it. That obviously, if the CIA had those capabilities back in 2009, and that's not even necessarily mentioned in the Vault 7 leaks, we can only imagine what's going on now. So Apple is not necessarily lying here, saying that they patched those vulnerabilities. Yes, they are correct if you have a 3G iPhone or a 3GS iPhone, or the older Mac variants. Yes, those issues are patched, but they nowhere speak about current software anywhere in their comments that they released. So it's left out of the equation there. So we're left in the dark knowing that, but I'll let you guys decide for yourselves. The strange, my last article here, something strange. Alone in the wild for a year, TV contestants learn their show was canceled.
Oh, that's
so awful. There was a show apparently being filmed in the Scottish wilderness, and it was apparently for 12 months. There was about, I believe, 20 some odd contestants, and the whole object was for them to sort of the show was called Eden, and they were supposed to film this show and make sort of like this social experiment about men and women living in isolation, and they would take the challenge of building a new life, creating a society from scratch. Well, apparently during the filming, after several months, only 10 of those 20 some odd contestants were left, and there were all kinds of like hazards and everything. But apparently the studio or whoever was filming the show forgot to mention that the filming was canceled, and these people stayed out there in this 600-acre estate and finished out the show, only to find that it had been canceled afterwards. Dan?
Jeez, that's crazy, man. All right, give me 1 second to get the screen capture on my side here. Okay.
There's some really strange things out there, huh, Dan? I mean, this is just some of these. It wasn't hard for me to find a strange article, and it wasn't hard for me to find a bad article. So, and I was actually shocked when I was looking for good articles. I was kind of like pulling at teeth. I was like, man, it's so hard to find like a good article on some of these sites that I've been looking at. So maybe I have to change my search habits there when I'm looking for articles.
Yeah, well, I mean, you'll get more as you get more experience. It'll get easier too. So go ahead and start on my first story, the good. I think this is pretty cool. I'm kind of a sci-fi nerd, and I've always enjoyed space ever since I was a little kid. My grandpa took me to Kennedy Space Center, and so I saw this. This isn't really a new story. It came out in late February, but SpaceX is going to send 2 people around the moon on a private mission next year, theoretically. Now SpaceX has kind of missed the mark on their projected dates a lot, but I mean it's rocket science, it's space travel. It's not exactly easy, I'm sure. These guys are a lot smarter than I am, but I think it's pretty cool. They're gonna send them up on these rockets. They're gonna let them go out. I think it says here they're gonna use the Heavy Falcon rocket, or the Falcon Heavy rocket, with their Dragon capsule, and it's supposed to go 300 to 400,000 miles. That's right here, which is actually further than the Apollo 13 space mission went. So I think that's kind of cool. We're finally getting back into space travel and the space race kind of thing. I'm going to be interested to see how this plays out with the with the free market behind it, where it's not being facilitated by governments and such. But anyways, I think this is really cool. I'm looking forward to see what happens. I know there's been talk from Elon Musk talking about going to Mars sometime in the next 10 years. I think that'd be kind of cool to see if that plays out as well. And so we'll go ahead and move on over to the bad. And this one actually is quite bad, if you ask me. It was pretty disturbing when I saw it. For those of you who don't know what a spear-phishing attack is, some people would say it's a hacking attack. It's not really hacking. This is what happened to John Podesta. For those of you who don't remember, he was Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, and his email was "quote unquote" hacked supposedly by the Russians. He was phished. He was sent an email that said, your Gmail password needs to be changed. Click this link to change it. That gave them access to it. And this is a story out of England about a young lady who fell victim to a spear-phishing attack, and rather than demanding money or something of the sort, he went really creepy with it and wanted her to perform explicit acts over her webcam. There's a lot of detail in here. I'm not going to go through the whole story, and honestly, I know that there are some people who maybe have had situations like this or sexual assault situations in the past, so I don't really want to go into it too much. But the point being, in this story, it keeps driving the point home of people really, really need to pay attention to what they're doing online. They need to pay attention to what they're putting online. You don't have to put everything on the internet. I mean, this poor woman, she lost access to her Facebook account. The guy who did the spear-phishing attack gained access to her iCloud account as well as some others. And in that iCloud account, apparently she had photos of her passport, a lot of her personal documents, as well as some explicit pictures that she would not want to have released, which he then did put at least one of them on her Facebook page before they were able to get it taken down. So this poor woman is, she's going through a lot of this stuff. And it really could have been avoided by just having a bit more safe practice when it comes to, what we put on the internet. All right, and finally, The Strange. This is called also from the BBC, called A Guide for the All About Me Generation. And this one was interesting. I actually sent this out to a couple, probably about 6 or 7 people from varying generations. I wanted to get a generational perspective on what they thought about this article. I didn't get a whole lot of feedback, so I'm not going to go into it right now. That might be a good discussion for a later time once I actually get feedback from let me just say, the older generation, my mom and an older gentleman from my church, they responded right away, and the millennials and the younger folks just did not respond at all. So I don't know if that's telling at all. But it's an interesting story about this guy in Norway. He started a company after his time in the Norwegian military, and while he was in there, he noticed that a lot of his employees had a hard time getting to know each other. It was kind of awkward trying to get to know people in the hall in a bigger company, and so he had this interesting idea. Let me see if I can find it in here. He had an idea to create a personal user manual. And basically what that means is he had each employee write out some information about them, their personal habits. Like for instance, they mentioned one guy in here who didn't like people to come and talk to him in the hallway because that was his time to walk around and think. So it was an interesting read. It was an interesting concept, and I'd be interested to know what you think, Chris, about something like that. I think it's kind of a cool approach, but I also think it's kind of sad that we have to have some kind of a personal user manual for people to get to know us rather than just being a personable human being and talking to one another.
Yeah, Dan, I think it really shows where we're at as a society, as where sort of our societal norms are heading. And it's always interesting to see something like this because with every generation, there's always trends that are, it's inevitable. And one of the things that happens is, or is happening now is, people are losing sort of the ability to interact in a constructive way. When you go to a restaurant, I've observed people on dates who apparently were on dates anyway. They're both sitting there on their cell phone and not really engaging with each other or, necessarily, less importantly, the waiter or waitress. But I also have family members who I know do that same thing as well, to where you'll be with them and they're constantly checking. They got these notifications popping up. I have an Apple Watch. I turn all my notifications off so that I'm not doing that during conversations. I try to keep as few notifications on my iPhone, my personal phone, my iPhone, as possible so that I'm not distracted personally when I'm doing work. But to see people do things like that, and it's really distracting when you're having a personal conversation with someone and they're looking down what time, and you think they're looking at their watch to see what time it is, and that in itself is rude, but they're actually checking and reading messages or notifications from their social media, such as Instagram or Facebook, or even, whatever it is that's the, the flavor of the week. And so, yes, I think it's really troubling, and the family structure or lack thereof in a lot of households, I don't think is helping that, because children are being essentially pushed by their parents into these alternate realities of iPads, iPhones, video games, and television, so that the parents can basically do the same thing for themselves. So they're being taught the children are learning by osmosis, and then they're taking it to the next step because that's how they're growing up. So it's inevitably going to happen.
I agree and I disagree at the same time. I mean, not all parents do that, obviously.
Yeah, I'm generalizing there.
Yeah, but I mean, to some degree, you are right. I mean, that's one of the complaints I've had about. That is a fantastic mug, sir. For
all of you who need to see this,
there you go.
For the first order.
No, that was one of the complaints that I had about my boy's school, is that for instance, Eli, my oldest son, all of his homework is on the computer. We were able to talk to the teacher, and they've started giving him like an actual physical math book he can bring home and to do his math homework. But I mean, he would just come home and he would sit down on the computer and start doing his math or his science on there, and then he'd have to get on the iPad to use the app to do his spelling homework. And then I'm like, that's way too much screen time. Like he obviously, like, there are times like lately we've been sick a lot, so we've let them watch a lot more TV than we usually do. But I think that, I don't know, I think it's kind of detrimental in some ways, but yeah, I mean, I think that wasn't really the point of the article. I don't think it was just weird that, having to basically create yourself a bio that people in the company can read to get to know you, to know what your quirks are, rather than just getting to know you, as you are in a conversation or something like that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was picking up on. And I really felt like that the reason people don't do that is because they're distracted with all of these devices and notifications. So yeah, it is. I do agree. That is very sad. And what you just said about your son, your oldest son, I wasn't even aware of. So I don't. My kids are not school age yet, not quite yet. So I didn't even know. Is this something that's more prevalent in? He's in first grade, right?
Yeah.
So is this something that seems like it's more prevalent now?
Actually, he's in second grade. I'm sorry, I'm getting my years mixed up. I don't know. I mean, this is their first year in public school. They're in a charter school now, but it's obviously when they were homeschooled, it wasn't like that. Yes, there's Kylo Ren. But this is our first year with them in school, so it's kind of hard to tell. We have had them in other schools, like as we've been moving around and stuff, and it was never like this. So it might just be something unique to this particular school. But I also know that companies like Google, for instance, they'll give schools like hundreds of Chromebooks that they can just give to the kids, which is another can of worms that we can go about for discussion at a later time too. But that way the kids end up getting their own Google account. Then they have their Chromebooks that they get to keep with them, and then the whole school is interlinked with like this Google software, and so everything is done on the Chromebooks, and it's weird. I mean, it's sci-fi, like it's kind of cool, but as a parent, I'd rather not have my kid focus entirely on getting on to technology and getting on the screen, which is saying something because I love computers and I like to be on computers a lot. So I just don't think it's good or necessarily healthy for little kids to be put in front of a screen that much.
Yeah, and there's studies that have shown that screen time severely can hinder your growth in so many ways, and obviously we see that emotional growth is one of those ways. I think that it can be argued as to as far as intelligence what that would do, but being able to have easy access and at an earlier age to information like that, I feel like does help intelligence in general. I mean, our kids we do have an iPad that we let them go on. And, they're learning their alphabet, their numbers, and all kinds of things at an earlier age that I feel that I ever did. So that's a positive. So there are positives to sort of the technological aspects, but there definitely are drawbacks, and we can see that with emotional intelligence, among other things.